I'm not gonna say ladies and gentlemen anymore.
Really?
Yeah, I realized I'm not being as inclusive.
Yeah.
As I want to be, right? Because I'm taking out then, because of me saying ladies and gentlemen, I'm taking out a part of a demographic that I wish to like also have listen, right? So I want to be more welcoming with the linguistic language that I use and the words that I use and how I greet the beginning of episodes.
Sure. So are you gonna have a new tag now?
Yeah.
Okay, what is it? Have you thought about this? Really?
Of course.
Okay, good.
Well, just now.
Oh fuck. Okay.
Folks, welcome to an
good.
episode of The Artenders with Mac and Dan. I am Dan, he is Mac.
Howdy!
We are reviewing a movie, a horror movie, but also kind of a comedy from the year 2014, directed and written by Kevin Smith, known for his works Clerks and Chasing Amy.
Genius.
There's a movie called Tusk, starring Justin Long, Michael Parks, Haley Joel Osment.
A-list celebrities across the board, clearly.
And Johnny Depp.
C-list at best.
Yeah. But, so this is an interesting movie.
I'd say.
I'm just gonna, hit it right off the bat and say, not a good movie.
I'm gonna have to say that I think that's objective fact.
So with that being said,
agrees.
Because Max subjugated me to the watching of this film.
Yes.
And it was not a good film. Mac, did you see this movie prior? Oh, also, by the way, I completely forgot to give the context of the piece itself.
Yeah, please.
So a guy gets kidnapped. Let me just read the IMDb description. A brash and arrogant podcaster gets more than he bargained for when he travels to Canada to interview a mysterious recluse who has a rather disturbing fondness for walruses. Essentially, he gets turned into a walrus. So, Mac.
I think that's a gross summary. And
it is gross.
It is gross.
This movie is disgusting.
Justin Long gets kidnapped, and then slowly but surely by this psychopath that he's been kidnapped by is like physically and surgically turned into a tusk. He is put his arms are sewed to the side of his body so that he can only flap and shit. He sticks tusks into his head, and he stuffs him into a walrus body. And spoiler alert, I've already spoiled so much. He doesn't go back to being a fucking human.
We're gonna get into that.
Okay.
We're gonna unpack that.
We have to.
Because it's both the best and the absolute worst.
I just think that is the hook of this whole podcast episode. Is just how absolutely bananas this whole plot really actually is, if you sit down and think about it. And the first question that I have, and I will answer your question, but the first question that I will have after I answer is, how did we like it aside from the fact that it was super fucking weird?
Well, I mean, it wasn't a good movie.
Right.
Let's just acknowledge the fact that tonally, this movie had no idea what it was doing. It could not decide between being a comedy and being an actual horror movie.
Right.
Which, it's funny because this movie was a worse comedy than it was a horror movie. Mm-hmm. I thought when this movie was trying to be a horror movie, pretty solid.
Because
surprisingly solid.
This is the thing. Because with horror, it's not like you necessarily, or thriller at least, don't necessarily have to feel scared. You just have to feel intense something.
It's the tension. It's the tension of the moment. It's the tension of the stakes.
And let me tell you, there is no lack of tension here. I am constantly that's the best sound I can think to make.
And sometimes not in a good way. Sometimes it's tension of oh God, why is this scene like this?
No.
Why haven't we moved on from this scene?
This is no Parasite.
But Mac, why did you select Tusk? Did you already see Tusk prior to this recording? Well,
yes.
What's going on in your mind?
Right. So, funny enough, and this might be even more scarring than the movie itself. This is actually kind of a thing that my family has been talking about for a while. So, one day, my little brother, he comes home from school and he's like, guys, I need to show you something. And he shows, not me, but he shows my dad and my other brother a plot summary of this movie. They're like, what? And it's kind of, it's pretty quick. So they watch the whole movie together. And afterwards, they can't stop talking about it for weeks. They keep talking about it because it scarred them. Yeah. Let me tell you, like, I can't think of a more scarring movie. Something that, like, leaves an image in your mind more intensely.
Because when we say that Justin Long was turned into a walrus, that may ask, a few questions like, oh, was this sort of like a mind transplant? Like his brain was put into a walrus and all of a sudden he's controlling the walrus?
Like, do we ever see real walruses in this movie? Only in flashbacks.
Correct.
We see Justin Long inside the skin of a walrus.
But this skin of a walrus is made from human skin.
Yes.
And that's the disturbing
part,
part of it all.
Because you can see the stitches of all of the different parts of the body that the skin was taken
Yeah,
from.
and then some pieces of the skin is like a stretched out face. You see an ear
it's
here
so
and there.
Gross.
It is legitimately disgusting. And props, absolute tremendous props to the whoever was part of the sort of special effects crew.
Because let me tell you, they hit it on the head. As you're finding Maya Lieberman. As costume designer, and then a huge makeup department of home run hitters. So my family watched it for a couple weeks, right? They told me that I had to watch it. Well, I kept asking what was going on. They were like, no, we can't tell you. You just have to watch it. I watched it. I nearly threw up.
Yeah.
And
it's a disgusting movie.
It's a disgusting movie.
But it's not like poop disgusting.
No.
It looks disgusting, and it's also very unsettling, and it's like it's like a car accident and you can't really look away.
Yeah. Well, like for instance, I did throw up in my mouth at 12 Years a Slave.
Yeah.
I would say, even though this wasn't necessarily out of like the same sadness as 12 Years a Slave, I'm saying that I was vomiting not because it was like barf gross, because I was disturbed to my core. I was rocked to my core. Like, I cannot even fathom that this is happening in front of you right now on a screen. Anyways, so I watched it, and then it kind of became this thing amongst my family. Like, we kept talking about it. So we talked about last season of The Artenders that we wanted to have more hate watches, because even the worst thing that we watched last season...
I don't know if you can say we wanted to see
I
more
did.
hate
I
watches.
said. Because last season, even the worst thing we watched wasn't all that bad. No. And so I wanted to make sure that by the end of this season, we had at least a few picks that were just dog shit.
Right.
And so I was looking up some of the worst movies of all time, and I came across this title, and I was like, holy shit. My family, I would love to talk about Tusk, because it is, it's so... it stays with you. It really stays with you. I would say that this stay with me. That's one way to put it. Even more than Lovecraft Country with the little girls. Because I told you whenever we did that episode that those little, and still to this day, if I'm ever in like a dark alley or like in a dark space, I still imagine those little girls.
Oh my god, they really got you.
They really did. Like, I cannot think of many things scarier than those little girls from Lovecraft Country. Maybe Tusk has beaten it. Okay. Like, I really... I as I'm falling asleep at night, I am imagining Justin Long's face with the huge ass tusks coming out of it.
Yeah,
truly,
it's genuinely a disturbing film, and once again, credit to the costume and makeup department, because not only, and it looks, I'm going to assume, I haven't done sort of research into the sort of production of this walrus suit. Looks entirely practical. Maybe some like visual effects sprinkled in there, but I mean, it looks to me like an entirely practical suit that somebody was controlling. Yeah. And so it gave this believability of the moment and that sort of disturbing nature of like, oh no, this looks kind of real. Like, you know it's not real because obviously, who the fuck? But this looks real, and that sort of sensory is enough to sort of drive you over the edge and make you immensely uncomfortable for this film. Now, what I do want to get into is the quality of the horror storytelling of this film. Now, we haven't done much horror. No. Last season, we did Lovecraft Country, as you said, and we also did, it's on the fringe of it, I will admit, but Parasite, right?
Parasite, yeah.
But because...
we had a couple thrillers.
Yes, yeah, for sure. But what makes these horror movies so good and, like, sets them aside from, like, slasher movies like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, or not really that, but more Freddy vs. Jason. Yeah. Let's say that. What really sets them aside is the tension. Now, There are a lot of horror movies that are sort of really coming back into frame. And when I say a lot, that was too gracious. But there are some horror movies that are coming back into the frame with the genre. In the last few years, there has been Hereditary and there's been Midsommar. Now, unfortunately, I've not seen either of those movies, but I've been told those movies are absolutely incredible.
I'm really excited for Old, by the way.
Oh.
Have you seen commercials for that?
M. Night Shyamalan?
Yes.
I don't know if that movie is going to be good.
You don't think so?
Well, I just don't know.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's M. Night Shyamalan. It's like flipping a coin, but it's...
That's true. That's true.
Who knows?
M. Night Shyamalan, oh, yeah, that's a very indecisive, good director.
Yes.
Go ahead.
But what makes horror so interesting in this particular context, is the tension.
Mm-hmm.
And part of how you build tension in these movies, in these stories, is when the stakes are immensely high for these characters, right? And how you build tension is when time is a factor.
Yes, yeah.
And so it's wonderful moments that occur.
Oh, that's a very good observation.
When you have one character, in this case, Justin Long, and his character of Wallace Britton, who is running out of time because Howard Howe, played by Michael Parks, is slowly turning him into a walrus. And we all know this. I mean, the movie's called Tusk. We all know what we're signing ourselves up for.
Yeah.
We don't just, hit Netflix. I think this movie was on Netflix for a period of time. But we don't just, go to streaming services and just Tusk 2014? Oh, Kevin Smith. Oh, Justin Long. Okay, 5.3 stars on IMDb.
Yep.
You know what? I'll give it a shot. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. We remember this movie because it was so, first of all, odd, but what made it so impressive was, partially impressive, was because of that tension. So you would have Wallace running out of time, and then you would have his friends, Teddy, and his girlfriend, Allie, hunting for him in a way. And when I say hunting for him, I mean he is disappeared and he is lost, right? And so there's a beautiful scene, in my opinion, one of the better scenes of the film, is when Wallace is able to find his phone. How he finds his phone, it makes no fucking sense.
No.
Because
very
he
convenient.
falls. It's super convenient where he falls asleep and he wakes up in a wheelchair and he's missing a leg. So and for some reason his phone is ringing and his girlfriend's calling him. So he just wheels himself over to his phone, even though Howard Howe put the phone there. He didn't just get rid of the phone. It makes no fucking sense.
No.
Super duper plot convenience, and I hate that. But
Howard Howe must be a genius to be getting away with all these murders. Sorry, go ahead.
Exactly. In this one location at the same time where nobody is checking out, and the IRS just doesn't care.
Right.
How does he make his income? We don't know. But what we do know is that he made this call first to his girlfriend, Allie, played by Genesis Rodriguez, and then to his best friend, Teddy, played by Haley Joel Osment.
I can barely take that guy seriously. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I know. He plays Sora in Kingdom Hearts. Now, what is... Mac did not know this.
I did not know that. No, go ahead.
But what happens is that... how we find out, it's so interesting. Allie doesn't pick up, and then Teddy doesn't pick up, because they're actually having a moment together, and we see a little bit of that scene, and turns out Allie is cheating on Wallace with Teddy, his best friend. Now, mind you, Wallace, grade A asshole.
Yeah.
Racist.
Truly.
For no reason, just to paint him as an asshole, but to such a point, it's just you didn't have to make him racist just to be an asshole. He was already an asshole by himself.
This was a very 2000s amount of racism, considering this movie was made in 2014. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It felt very out of place. And it would have, I don't think it was oh man, it's a different time type of thing, because you can say that if it was 2001, the amount of racism that he was giving off. But I would have been very uncomfortable in 2014 watching this movie.
Oh, immensely. And I was uncomfortable now.
Clearly.
Especially to somebody who is Cuban. And I am Cuban. Yeah. But, nevertheless. And she's also Colombian, too. Oh, God, I hope I got that right. Okay, but as I'm also, filibustering and filling out this information, God damn it, she's Venezuelan.
Failure.
But she is half Cuban, though. Now, So we find out that they're having like an affair with one another, and like we don't feel bad for Wallace because he's an asshole and like whatever. And it's more just like, okay, this is a forced relationship that like makes no sense because we have no prior scenes of Allie and Teddy, and it's very obvious when they try to do this sort of like suspenseful when Allie is giving this emotional monologue about how Wallace is like this piece of shit to her, and then we see a hand wipe the tear away from Allie's face. We know it's fucking Teddy because there's no other character in this film that's gonna be that, but whatever.
That's true.
So how this scene is set, we have a camera set in the bathroom, and we have both of their phones charging in the bathroom. Why they're charging in the bathroom, whatever, but it makes for this pretty decent shot. And so we see the phone ring for Allie, and it goes to voicemail. I hit the microphone. I'm so sorry. And then we see the phone ring for Teddy, and it also goes to voicemail, right? And we see them in the background, sort of like next to each other. They're not doing anything, but they're just like enjoying each other's company, right? And then fast forward to the next morning where Allie gets up, and it's the same exact shot composition.
Yeah.
She gets up and she goes to the bathroom and, you know, she starts brushing her teeth and she pulls out the phone. She sees the voicemail. So she starts listening to the voicemail and then she goes to pee. And then, like, you can see the shift in her eyes.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I'm like, Kevin Smith knows what he's doing. And so that's how you build this. God damn it, I keep hitting the microphone. And that's how you build this.
Now you know how it feels to be on that side of the mic. I'm kidding. Sorry. Go ahead.
And that's how it feels to wow, no, I completely robbed the words from you. You threw me for a loop. But that's a wonderful moment in sort of tension building when you want those characters to realize something, but you know is completely within their character to either A, not realize it, and or B, just ignore it entirely, like willingly ignore it. And so I thought that was actually really well done by the film. And I also want to give the film overall credits in terms of the shot composition, in terms of some of the directing, where it's so clear, and I already knew this kind of going into it, that Kevin Smith is such a film buff. I don't know. And I don't think, you know what? No, I don't think this is sizzle surf. I don't think this is a hot take. I really believe there is not a human being out there in the universe that loves film more than Kevin Smith.
Wow, really?
And that shit shows. Right?
Sure.
Because like you can tell that this is more grassroots, a little bit of a lower budget sort of film, but this guy knows how to create images.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. That's true.
And like within the space.
That's true.
And how and just sort of like the construction of shots. Now, does he know how to write scenes?
No.
Not all the time.
That leads me on my sizzle serve, which is this movie is god awful.
Yeah.
But I think that this movie could potentially be kind of interesting.
No, I agree. No, listen.
If it wasn't for the writing.
I agree.
I think that Kevin Smith is a good enough director.
Yes.
I think the concept is actually haunting.
Yes.
I think they had moderate actors. Like, I've seen Justin Long be good.
Yeah.
I've seen Johnny Depp be good, duh.
Yeah.
I've seen Genesis Rodriguez be fine. And I've seen Haley Joel Osment, obviously, whenever he was a child, be good, but never since.
Oh, for sure.
And, like, I think that all the pieces are there, minus the script. The concept, absolutely there, minus the script. Now, another thing that's kind of strange is the fact that Kevin Smith, as well as Johnny Depp. I didn't know that Johnny Depp was good enough friends with Kevin Smith to pull this move.
No idea.
He must have been friends with him to let his daughter be in the movie, as well as Kevin Smith's daughter was in this movie. Kevin Smith and Johnny Depp's daughter, for those that don't know,
they're both respective daughters, not their collective one daughter.
Yeah, no. Both their daughters, the different daughters, were both in the movie. They weren't big parts, but they were both in the movie.
And they also weren't good.
Weren't good.
If we're just going to cross this bridge.
No. But it lets me know a little bit about Johnny Depp, that he is allowing his daughter to be in the movie. And it lets me know even more about Kevin Smith, that he named his daughter Harley Quinn Smith.
Because of course.
It doesn't bother me that he's naming her after a fictional comic book character. It's the fact that it's like the most sexualized fucking character.
Whoa.
Harley Quinn?
The most?
Are you kidding? Okay, not the most. Maybe not the most. I'm speaking out of turn there. But that's a bit.
I would
mean,
not
come
say
on.
the most sexualized.
You know what I mean, though?
I understand what you're trying to get at.
That would be like naming my daughter Mia Khalifa Welch.
That is so different. That is so immensely different. Stop. Enough. I'm putting a cap on this conversation.
It's not that far. It's not that far.
No, it's immensely far.
But no. I'm saying it's not. It's. I understand Harley Quinn's not that bad, but it's still weird to name your daughter Harley Quinn. Smith.
Okay, what's your point? Now you're just attacking Kevin Smith's character. What's going on?
I'm attacking his choice of names, at least.
So what does that have to do with anything?
I'm saying that tells me a lot about Kevin Smith. Clearly, after watching this movie, I'm thinking to myself,
who
the fuck is this guy Kevin Smith? That he writes Tusk? Who thinks of this shit? And then I start looking at this guy in his life.
He also technically did not think of this. No, go ahead.
He didn't?
No, so what this was a sort of prank post, I believe on like Gumtree, which I think is like a Craigslist equivalent. That
makes so much more sense.
That essentially this guy just put this fake ad. It was a prank and wanted people to come over, hang out, and hopefully dress as a walrus with him. And so how this sort of film transpired from that prank post was that Kevin Smith was talking about it on his podcast, and you can listen to part of that podcast if you continue in the credits, which I think Sizzle Serve, the best decision in this film. Or, not even Sizzle Serve. Let's reel that back. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a heady play.
That's a heady play.
That's a heady play.
Heady play. You're trying to get off, ladies and gentlemen. That was good.
It's a heady play to, like, have that piece of the podcast there. And what is happening in this podcast, they take the snippet from it and they put it in the credits. Not at the beginning, but towards, like, halfway through the credits. And they're kind of like jokingly talking through the third act of the film. And when they're talking through the third act of the film, that shit is hilarious.
Yeah.
That is legitimately funny. You're meaning to tell me that this guy who was made into a walrus, but like the person who did that to him, also dressed up as a walrus and said, "Let's fight to the death, to see who is more walrus."
Yeah.
And so then when he was killed, then it proved that Wallace Brighton became the walrus, right?
Yeah.
And that the fact that he was then transferred to a different like animal enclosure, and there was a fish wrapped in newspaper by Wallace's now then ex-girlfriend, and tosses the fish down.
And he starts nomming on it, and then he looks up at her, remembers his past human life.
Yeah. But he's more walrus than human now.
So he has to scuffle back into his little cave.
And then she says, "I love you, Wallace. I'll never forget you." That shit is funny.
That's very funny.
That's very funny.
Very funny, yeah.
That's very, very funny. So
But the fact that they knew it was funny tells you a lot, because you're like, okay, then how am I supposed to feel? Because I'm so grossed the fuck out. Am I supposed to be laughing, or am I supposed to be grossed out?
And that was the biggest issue of the film for me. It was like when it hit the horror movie points, I thought it hit those points kind of quite beautifully for the moment, right? I mean, and we're talking about like the tension also in between the scenes with Wallace and Howard, right? Where it's this like weird navigation. Their first and like second meeting with each other, that they're sort of like testing each other's waters, and you could tell like Howard is sort of doing this work, but they're like actively responding to one another, and something is up, so it makes this really organic scene that's just beautiful to watch, like legitimately beautiful. And like, you and I, being trained in theater, I mean, we're suckers for people to just naturally respond to one another. Yeah. And that was 100% the case in some of those scenes. But then there was also when the movie was trying to be comedic. And specifically a comedic, not conceptually, because conceptually this movie is hilarious. It was in some of the writing in some scenes. It was with just some of the scenes themselves. Biggest example, not even like 15 minutes into the movie, Justin Long's character has a conversation with a border agent, a Canadian border agent, who is played by, I shit you not, the host of the then super duper popular, and I still think, people know
it's still relatively popular,
this YouTube channel called Epic Mealtime, where they do these like gigantic meals, mostly of meat, and
so gross.
Genuinely disgusting. And this scene, the border agent is like played by the host of that. This scene is legitimately awful because nothing happens in this scene. We don't learn anything in this scene. We don't even learn that Wallace is more of an asshole in this scene. This scene does us nothing. It was just dead air.
Yeah.
It also wasn't funny.
Right.
The jokes weren't that good. The acting wasn't that great. It was immensely clear these two people have no idea what they're doing with this script at the present moment. And it was so clear to me that somebody needed to step in and be like, hey, this doesn't belong. This adds literally nothing. If this scene was funny, I could at least give it that. I would still criticize it for being out of place, but I could be like, hey, I laughed my ass off.
Yeah.
I had a good time during that scene. And you know what? Whatever, we're just here to have a good time, a fun time, and not necessarily a long time. But that scene was a long time.
Yeah.
And that scene was not a good time, and it was not a fun time. It was a boring time and not an interesting time. And it was odd because nobody said anything. Nobody was like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this scene.
Here's a question. So what we're kind of getting to is there is clearly a discrepancy between the way that Kevin Smith decided to direct this movie and write this movie. He wrote this movie to be more of a comedy. He intended at the very beginning with the concept for it to be a comedy, and then upon directing it, did not direct it as such.
Oh, God, you're so right.
So I'm wondering, would this movie have been better if he got a more dramatically experienced writer to write it? Or would it be better? Yeah. Or would it be better for him to have written it himself and get a more comedic director like a Seth Rogen or Judd Apatow to direct it?
It's not even. I mean, like, sure. I think it's more so the writing, right? But the issue was tone, right? And so I think he had too many eggs in one basket, right? He was biting off more than he can chew. That he wanted a comedic film that was also super duper tense, right? I haven't seen anything beyond this film that is, Kevin Smith's repertoire. From my understanding, Clerks is a cult classic.
Yeah.
And people love Clerks.
Yeah.
And I know that's a comedy, right? He needed to understand and slow down. He needed to slow down with what he was working with and look at the script again and say to himself, okay, so this is what I'm working with, and then achieve that vision and be consistent with that vision. But he never took a moment to look behind him and say, oh, this is my work so far on this film, right? At the table, right? At the sort of reading table, at the first rehearsal, everybody coming together and they read the first draft or whatever draft of the script, very close to final draft. And I'm sure there were laughters and there was a wonderful time in the room and a wonderful exploration for some of these characters, right? And for some of these actors. But it stuns me still that there was never a moment of self-reflection and realization where I'm directing two different movies.
Yeah.
That's the biggest indictment to this film.
Yeah.
It's not the fact that the comedic scenes are bad, because the comedic scenes are bad. But that's not the biggest indictment. It's because you're watching two different films at the same time. And one of them is pretty good, and one of them is mediocre. And I would like to believe that if it was just a comedy, he could, spruce it up a little bit more. And if it was just a horror movie, that the tension could be fucking cut with a knife.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the case.
Right.
And that was like a frustrating part for me watching this movie.
I would love to get your take on your gold medals when we come back after a word from our sponsor. All right, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Now, just let me explain. First of all, it's free. Second of all, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch more. And third, now this is really important, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Hear me when I say no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello and welcome back to The Artenders. So, where we left off, Mr. Daniel Arturo Lavelle, what was your gold medal? Or who was your gold medal?
It's Genesis Rodriguez. Now,
Respect to that.
I'm not just saying this because she's partially Cuban and she's from Miami, although that's a big plus.
Did you know that going into the movie?
No.
Okay, good.
I
You're
had
good.
no idea.
Well, then there you go. Then this is a genuine pick.
Yes,
there we
this
go.
is a genuine pick.
Good.
Because, a couple of things. Kevin Smith can't write women.
No.
Or at least if I'm using a one game sample. I'm using a one movie sample. If I'm just strictly going off of this movie, Kevin Smith cannot write women. Now, what are the biggest pointers from people not being able to write women? How can you tell when somebody does not know how? When there is a woman character, and there's just one in the story, right? If there's not zero, there's only one, maybe two. And their entire, like, sort of crux, their thing, is about a guy.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the fucking case with Genesis Rodriguez.
Definitely does not pass the Bechdel test.
No.
Not even close.
Could you please explain the Bechdel test?
Bechdel test is basically, are there... It's a test administered to movies. In the movie, are there female characters, or is there at least one female character that goes an entire scene without having a conversation about another male in the movie?
And that was not the case
Never.
At all.
Never.
Right? And in terms of the main cast of this movie, she is the only female.
This is a very bro film.
Her entire thing is, I'm with this cheating boyfriend. He's a piece of shit. I'm really upset about it. I'm so upset. I'm going to cry. Every scene that I'm in, I'm going to cry because I was written this way. And then I'm going to cheat on my shitty boyfriend with his friend, which is also like what is going on, and then it's just does not make sense. And so this girl was acting the shit out of that awful writing. She was legitimately in a different movie. She was seriously in a different movie.
In a good way.
In the best way.
In the best way.
Because of how well she was doing, right? That she was working with breath, right? And she was exploring these sort of emotional vulnerability. And you see it in her eyes that she's taking this sort of thought-by-thought process, right? And sort of when she has this scene where it's this close-up of her and she's sort of crying, that the camera slowly zooms in on her face, and she's sort of exploring her relationship with Wallace and how shitty he is, but how much she can't help but be attracted to her and be attracted to him and be with him, even though we never really see a moment where they have a moment like that together.
Yeah.
We're just purely told that, but whatever, fuck it, who cares, huh? But she's acting the shit out of that.
Shame.
And she has, like, no real stimuli in front of her either. And how she was able to paint this picture, right? When she was just exploring her thoughts and just exploring her emotions in the moment, she was immensely present, especially given, like, the script writing.
Yeah.
And so when watching this, I'm like, oh my god, this poor girl. And she's acting circles around everybody else. Like, can you also imagine being in a scene with Johnny Depp and you're the better actor? And she was consistently the best actor on screen.
Yes, she's true.
By a landslide.
That's true.
And what's really, really funny, and I think this is the best part, is that at the end of the film, when Wallace the Walrus is in this sanctuary, and Allie and Teddy come, and she throws the fish, and she's like, "I love you, Wallace." I believe it, and that's the funniest part. Yes,
that's funny.
Not because of the writing,
because of her.
I believe it strictly because of the acting. I legitimately wish she wasn't in this movie, because she deserves better than this movie. I'm glad she was, because it made the movie so much better by her performance. But she should not have been in this movie.
Yes, she was much better than the people surrounding her. And really elevated the shit that she was given. That's a big one. That's a huge one, actually. Very impressive. I would also say that it's a real shame that it doesn't seem like she's really gotten a big break. She's been in a lot of stuff, and she's been pretty good in a lot of stuff, but it's not like she's been this huge part of anything. I would say that she's not even close to being a household name.
No. But I mean, like, she's popular enough to be like, oh, I recognize her. Oh, she's in this. Oh, I remember her, right? But she is not getting, once again, just using a one-movie sample, she's not getting the quality of work that she simply deserves, and from this movie has earned.
And all the stuff that that I have seen her in, and I know her from, or all the stuff that I'm even seeing right now on her IMDb page, I am it's shockingly like mediocre to bad stuff. As well as like she's making decent work out of like the Umbrella Academy, which Umbrella Academy is not bad. It's definitely not that bad. Like it's pretty good. I liked Umbrella Academy, but her part in it was pretty small and like not just insignificant, but it was very shallow stuff. Like there was not really much depth for her to do, yet she did it really well. I would say very similar to this movie. So and you're saying that is at the fault of Kevin Smith.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is like the other people around her need to step up, right?
Sure.
Especially, oh gosh. And the issue also is like she's in scenes when she really shows off her acting chops, and like these scenes are constructed in a way where her scene partner has nothing to work from either, right? Yeah. So Justin Long's whole shtick is being an asshole, and so how can he... yes, he has to respond, right? As an actor, it's your duty to listen. It's your duty to respond to your scene partner and to work from there, right? Not to cultivate your own shit. It's to, a little bit of that, but most of it's responding to what's given to you.
Sure.
Because that's how we operate humanely, right? But there was also scenes with him where he's just an asshole, and that's just his MO, and so his whole thing is putting up a wall. I think that's more on the writing than it is on Justin Long.
Yeah.
Then you have scenes with Teddy, with Haley Joel Osment's character, where Haley Joel Osment doesn't even have dialogue to even work from. So it's just Genesis Rodriguez giving a monologue, mind you, great monologue in terms of performance, certainly not by writing. And so he has nothing to go from there either. And then you have a scene with Johnny Depp where he's this detective from, I believe, Quebec or Montreal. I don't know. I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Canada.
I'm sorry to all the Canadian listeners. I'm really sorry. And so he's not doing a good job, and he's just kind of shooting the shit. And it's a shame because in these scenes, I'm like, there's a great actor, and it's not you, Mr. Depp. I don't know if it's because of you. I don't know if it's because of the writing, but it's frustrating when you watch somebody and you're like, this person deserves better. And it's this sort of Idris Elba conundrum. Now, we all happen to know Idris Elba's name, but not because we all know Idris Elba is one of the best actors of our time.
Yeah.
The selection of work that he has been a part of, for the most part, pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking like...
Great.
Yes, but we're talking
After that,
the sequel to Ghost Rider.
Right.
Why was he a part of that? Idris.
Right.
Idris.
I think that it's and this would be...
There's also Beast of No Nation, which I haven't seen, but that's really it.
Getting into a whole other thing that, in terms of Marvel, I would say some of the worst movies that Marvel has ever made are in the Thor series.
Yeah.
And he was a part of them.
Pobrecito Idris.
A shame. An absolute shame.
In terms of like an underused actor.
True.
In those movies, it was Idris Elba. And in terms of an underused actor generally, Genesis Rodriguez deserves to be a part of that conversation. Yes. Mac, do you have any gold medals to sprinkle onto this? I realize I just threw you into a hole because I was assuming that you had a gold medal, but I wasn't entirely sure. But just, I guess, really, I should ask, any particular thoughts on certain people in this film?
I actually don't have a gold medal for a specific person in this film, because all of them were quite underwhelming. For me, I mean, Genesis Rodriguez did do a much better job than everyone else, but at the end of the day, you can only do so much. I will say that the most impressive part of Genesis Rodriguez for me is not just the fact that she didn't have much to work with. It was that her character was written to not be taken seriously.
Yeah. And she took it so seriously.
Like, she was simply there because she was a pretty face.
I think,
and that is such a shame. But she did something with that, which was impressive.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, if there was anybody at all in this movie who was taking it seriously, it was Genesis Rodriguez. And once again, she was in a different movie for the best reasons, but she was in a different movie because of that. Please continue.
I would say that the gold medal for me goes to the moment when Justin Long looks up. When Justin Long looks up at Genesis Rodriguez and Haley Joel Osment at the very end of the movie, just simply the shot of him waddling his ass back in the cave, that for me made everything worth it. Like, I didn't really laugh at many of the parts of the movie. There wasn't really anything else that was funny. It was mostly cringy or made me want to throw up. But in that moment, I think that I'm convinced the entire movie was made just so that we could get that one moment. Because I laughed my ass off when I saw him just wiggling back into the, because oh God, that it wasn't like a double, that wasn't CGI, that was Justin Long himself,
or at least some stunt performer, or just somebody. There was a person in that suit that's being paid to just like wiggle their way in this walrus suit with the tusks and everything, to wiggle their way back into the cave. Hilarious. God bless
I can't even
him.
tell you.
God bless him.
It's so funny. And wait, also, so this was unclear for me. Was he being kept inside a public zoo?
It was like a exotic animal sanctuary.
Okay. Who signed off on that?
Oh, no. Listen, bro, we can unpack the shit out of this movie with nonsensical bullshit. True. Okay? How does Howard Howe make money?
Big time.
How does Howard Howe, what is...
Well, he was a famous explorer, wasn't he?
What? I mean, we don't know that for a fact.
That's true.
It just, things don't really add up, right?
Yeah, there's a lot missing.
And so when... I don't know if there's much to believe when he supplied the story about the liquor bottle, and the liquor bottle, I think it was something along the lines, it was given to him by Ernest Hemingway, right? And so when it gets to later on in the film, you don't know what to believe him, with this shit. Right? And so when he says at the end, actually, I was in this, psychiatric ward, and, and they abused me, and they beat me. And so, that felt like an honest moment, but then, because him saying that is, and of also him making Justin Long into a walrus, it's like, okay, I can't really trust you, in terms of the stories that you are telling me.
Every time that I attempt to take this movie seriously, I'm always met with, I have to say with a straight face. And whenever he turns him into a walrus, and I just can't say that with a straight face. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
But then there's also, a really tense moment when, Howard Howe tries to make Wallace the Walrus swim and drags him into this pool of a basement in this giant house. How did he get this house? We don't fucking know. How did he build this basement? We don't know. And then just these old-timey projectors of walrus imagery and seagulls and waves crashing in the background. This shit doesn't make sense.
I will.
But Wallace the Walrus drowns, and we see the carcass of another walrus.
That's
spooky. Then we find out Wallace the Walrus was not the first one. And that's both a funny and a more so terrifying moment. There are moments in this film, and it drives me insane because it's not a good movie.
I know. And well, the funniest parts of the movie is every single time. The funniest parts are the parts that you're supposed to take the most seriously. They're supposed to be the most shocking, because the scary parts always are followed, or supposed to traditionally be followed, with the main character or whoever the horror is happening to, their response to it. It's like in Psycho, the scariest part is not whenever he starts stabbing the lady in the shower. It's whenever you see the shadow and then you see her turn around and scream, right?
It's suspense of it.
It's you see their response first and then you see the action, right? And so it's funny because every major moment of this movie, you see the scary thing and then you're supposed to see the person it's happening to in the response. But the person it's happening to has giant fucking tusks coming out of their face, and it's impossible to take it seriously. You know what I mean? Like, you see the other walrus on the the pool floor, and it's supposed to be like kind of scary, and you are scared at first, and then we get a reaction shot, and he's like, because he's got tusks coming out of his face.
And there's a lone beach ball just in the space. There's just
so
one
funny.
measly beach
It's too
ball.
good.
We haven't properly unpacked the fact that Howard Howe then puts himself in a walrus suit, and they're fighting. There's a walrus v. walrus, but it's human v. human, but it's walrus v. walrus.
Right.
But you know what they're doing? They're like bumping into each other, trying to kill each other.
Because they can't like attack each other because they're fucking walruses. Well, they're not even walruses; they're humans in a walrus form, and so they don't have the muscles necessary to actually like bend and flex.
Oh, God.
And so they're just kind of like jabbing at each other. So the only option is to figure out a way to drive your tusk into the motherfucker. Anyway, so Tusk. So this is the other thing though, is that I would go as far as to say that this is not, I don't think this is a horror movie. I think this is a psychological thriller. Okay. Because, which I know usually it would be giving it more credit than it's worth.
We're playing with semantics here. But I will entertain this notion.
This is why. Because, and I think this is to the movie's
also, who's
benefit.
to say it can't be both?
It's true. I mean, yeah, most of the time, horror, psychological thrillers are also horror.
Cutting you off. Please continue.
But I would say it's more than a horror movie. It's a psychological thriller because...
Yes.
Because the difference between a horror and a psychological thriller, in my mind, is that a horror does not explain why the scary things are happening. Mm-hmm. They just happen. Like in, Friday the 13th or whatever, or like in these like scary like Fright Night movies.
Sure.
They are, they're just like having a normal night, and then all of a sudden someone's like comes up and starts like stabbing motherfuckers, right?
Yeah.
But in this, we actually analyze and unpack how this guy got here. And it bothers me most because it actually kind of is interesting and makes sense. No one should be driven to turn a guy into a fucking walrus. But I gotta say, whenever Kevin Smith got this idea from the internet and was like, guy that turns other people into walruses, I wonder why he'd be doing that. This is a decent explanation. Like, it's kind of a cool backstory for an actor to have. You know what I mean? It's kind of impressive.
I thought you were going to continue.
No. I'm just saying, like, I tip my hat to just the idea. Shit. I'm so sorry. I really just thought that was an interesting idea, and I'm proud of it. And I think that was cool.
But there are two different horror movies, right? I mean, like I said earlier, there is this sort of like, whoa, horror movie, and then there are the ones that peek at the brain, that peek at the mind, like Psycho, right?
Right.
And so when we think of horror movie nowadays, we think of all the movies that Cabin in the Woods makes fun of.
Yes.
And that's what we think of horror movies, when really we should broaden our minds and broaden our sort of scope of horror movies to Midsommar, to Hereditary, to Psycho, and, dare I say, a little bit Tusk. Oh. Let's also unpack something really fast.
Yeah, please.
That there are just moments in this film that it's not funny. And let me be more specific. I alluded to it a little bit when, why make Wallace racist? Doesn't really add anything. Yeah. What's the point? It's just, is it so, like, when he's turned into a walrus, we can say, haha, you're a comeuppance? No, because why the fuck would we want anybody to turn into a walrus? But that's another point. True. And really, what I also want to look at is that it's really funny because Wallace and Teddy are making a shit ton of money from a podcast, and that's not the funny part, although that is kind of funny. As you know, I mean, I'm throwing rocks from a glass house right now, of course. and there are also multiple people who make lots of money from podcasts. No. My point that I'm making is their podcast name, which is Not See Party. Which, Kevin Smith, I ask you, how is this funny?
Yeah.
And so how do you actually also expect me to suspend my disbelief so much to say, now wait a second. They're making hundreds of thousands of dollars
from Nazi
this
Party
podcast that's called Nazi Party.
Yeah.
And just that alone is ludicrous.
Yeah.
Even sort of consider. But it's also, even setting that aside, let's just say I do suspend my disbelief. It's not fucking funny.
No.
It's not fun. Like,
No.
It's not, like, it is the most childish humor sort of thing. Like, we're Nazi Party.
Yeah.
We skirt the edge. We're edgy. We're cool. Everybody loves us. That is so fucking lame.
Yeah, it bothers me that a lot of the jokes from this movie, and a lot of the jokes that I've seen Kevin Smith make in the past, it feels like you have to do the work to make it funny in your mind. You know what I mean? Like he will set something up, and this isn't just with the Nazi Party thing. He'll set something up, and then he will tell you to make it funny on your own. If we want to take the Nazi Party thing, for instance, anyone that would make that would think that was funny is either a moron that just thinks the words Nazi Party are funny, or they have to make up a reason for it to be funny in their own mind. And it's just annoying. It's like
they press too hard on this joke. It's just bad
comedy.
On this bit.
Yeah.
That, like, it'd be one thing of, like, Nazi, I did not see that coming.
Right.
Drum
No,
snare.
It's just not see.
And they reference this a lot, that at one point, Allie is, like, calling the police and is like, hey, yeah, so he's, like, a podcaster, and the podcast is called Nazi Party. And so, like, the bit then is, like, Haley Joel Osment, like, yelling, like, spell it out. And then she's like, they hung up. You know, like, that's the joke. Like, it's like the movie built it up for this one joke, and the joke wasn't good.
No.
And so if you are going to have, folks, an edgy joke that really skirts the line and sort of, ooh, I'm uncomfy, make it funny.
It honestly is vaguely reminiscent of, and I apologize to everyone involved in Tusk for comparing you to this. It honestly kind of reminds me of The Room in a way, in that it just simply does not know what it is, and it's almost like it is made to be hate-watched. It's almost like it's made to be disliked.
Yeah, and I mean, perhaps.
Yeah.
Like the fact that Kevin Smith put a snippet from his podcast talking about the third act and laughing at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But at the same time, like, I want it also to be a good movie.
Yeah.
Like, I'm able to say, I mean, regardless of whether or not this is a good movie, just setting that aside and whatever I believe, the notion of, like, the main character being turned into a walrus is both stupid as shit and funny as hell.
Yeah.
Putting
pick one.
the quality of the film aside from that, right? Like, that's great.
Yeah.
And so just pick one. Yeah, need you to double down in either the absurdity or need you to double down of, like, the absurdity that is the comedy, or the absurdity that is, we're going to take this super seriously.
Right.
And that's where the comedy is going to come from. And that's what I think the movie should have done. That, like, take it super duper seriously, that it's more so a horror movie, but the comedy comes from when you take a step back. Holy shit, what the fuck is happening?
So overall, our overall summary of our review is pick a lane.
Pick a lane, dude. When you get to the bowling alley, I need you to like stick to one. I need you not to like bounce around. A
strike doesn't count if it's on someone else's lane.
Exactly.
And you're competing here. You want to score on your lane. Yeah. This is the rules of bowling.
Exactly. Just be careful with oncoming traffic. You know, you don't need to switch lanes. Just
don't need to veer.
Stick to one.
There's no lane split.
Generally, this doesn't have to be the case, right? There are times where movies subvert expectations, and not just movies, but other pieces of media that subvert expectations, that do a complete 180. I believe the movie starring Simon Pegg called like The World's End or At World's End, something about the world ending. Where at first it's like this like funny comedy, and then it becomes this like sci-fi thriller. Yeah, that's also still a comedy. But it's how it commits to all of those, right? As opposed to a film that's wishy-washy. And also, if you're trying hard to be a comedy, well, make the scenes funny. Don't have a 10-minute scene with a border agent that isn't funny. Don't have a 10-minute scene with Guy Lepont trying to, you know, talk about, you know, how he takes his coffee and the weird sort of things that he does and meandering. Like, it's frustrating because the pacing is all over the place. So it's just like, I want to get to the movie because it feels like that does not belong in the movie.
Or the invention of lying with Ricky Gervais, where it is hilarious, and it's a very funny concept that like no one has ever lied before, and he's the first person to ever lie, and now he's the only one that has the power of lying. Hilarious. So many things that can happen funny. Yeah. But then it becomes very serious when he ends up inventing a religion. That there were no religions, everyone just thought you died and that was it. And then he made up Christianity. That's a fucking interesting, dramatic concept. Yeah. And they do a really good job of funny. Way not funny anymore.
But also, conceptually, still funny as hell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, if you take a step back and just talk about the fact that he's making Christianity up on the fly, hilarious. He's writing it on a pizza box instead of the stones, hilarious. like the Testaments, or whatever.
Yeah. The stones.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Instead of the golden plates, or whatever, he's just doing the
commandments.
The commandments, right? Sorry.
You know the old and the new one. Put it on a pizza box.
The commandments. Thanks. Sorry, I blanked for a second.
It's okay.
My church is rolling over. No, I'm kidding.
Mac, do you recommend this movie?
Yes.
What the fuck?
I know. I do. I don't recommend it for by yourself. I don't recommend it sober. That's what I have to say about that. What about you, sir?
I mean, no, but like it's such a interesting thing to look at that like it's difficult to unpack. I don't recommend that you watch it, but you should watch it because of how stupid it is. I would say fast forward through like the comedic scenes that are dragging. Just get to the meat of the film. To the walrus meat, if you will.
This might be one of the only movies I've ever seen that I think that it might be best watched like in the background of a party. Like,
no, it won't.
What? Because like you're just like hanging out, like it's not that big of a deal. You don't have to pay attention to the plot or whatever.
Oh, and you just
then all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, guys, it's happening. And then you watch it and it's funny, and then you get back to your conversation or whatever. Yeah. That like basically what I'm saying is feel free to fast forward. Feel free to not pay attention too much. Danny, what are we watching next week or consuming? I apologize. Consuming.
No,
we're
watching. We're watching.
Watching. Okay.
I am immensely excited for this.
Oh, okay. Is it gonna be good?
We'll get there. So here's what's interesting. Like I said, I'm immensely excited for this. I've been waiting for this movie to come out for years after it was announced.
And it just came out?
Came out relatively recently. It's on Netflix. This movie is an adaptation of a video game, which in turn is an adaptation of a novel, which in turn is sort of romanticized retelling of historical events a thousand years prior. Ladies and gentlemen, and folks, excuse me, just folks. Mac, you and I are watching Dynasty Warriors.
That's a thing now?
There's a Dynasty Warriors movie?
Oh my god.
Based off of the video games.
Is that the one where you kill like thousands of people at a time?
Yes. based off of the novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms by, I believe, Luo Guangzhong. And
how many video games are there? 9, 10?
Multiple. And then spin-off Samurai Warriors. And then they also did a crossover where it was Dynasty Warriors meets Samurai Warriors called Warriors Orochi. Oh my god.
That is excellent.
It's the best. And I'm so looking forward to this film. And it's a hate watch. We're going to get back to the good stuff. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Thank you.